Good afternoon here in Dubai, and maybe good afternoon UK, and good morning maybe for people who are from different countries, and maybe some areas maybe, or some places, good evening. Welcome everybody. This webinar today, we're going to talk about the people-centric culture that helps achieve business success. Welcome to Network to Connect, a series of networking events by the corporate group that aims provide a free networking platform to learn, network, connect, and collaborate for business growth. Some general points for the attendees. Please do check that your microphone is on mute to allow everybody to clearly hear the speaker. Please post any questions that you have on the chat window. During the question and answers towards the end, we will try to answer as much as possible. The recording of today's session will be made available on the YouTube link, which will be shared after the webinar. Please do take the Network to Connect survey that we will forward after the event of way of improvement and request your upcoming needs. And today we would like to introduce our speaker, Gemma Carter-Morris, has over 15 years of experience as a senior manager, coach, and consultant with sound business understanding and supporting the completion of the MBA, of her MBA. Gemma is also a qualified well-being coach and a member of an association of coaches. She is also passionate about working with teams and organizations in different companies, allowing them to be the best version of themselves and reach their maximum potential in their organization. Gemma also delivered outplacements and career coaching and uses her well-being experience to emotionally support individuals as well as companies and increase their resilience while it's going through significant change. The topic today is very much focused on employees and their behavior first, although it will touch external customers and services and interaction on that one. And this is not only to the leadership, but to across all the staff and businesses where they interact and communicate internally and externally. Gemma, the floor is yours, and I guess you have access to the presentation and you're going to play with the slides.
Yes, thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. So just start with a bit of what we're going to cover today. So we'll talk about what is a people-centric culture and what this means for your organisation. We'll then look at quite a lot of different data and research that's been carried out globally that shows the benefits of investing in your people and putting your people at the forefront of strategic objectives and decision making. We'll then cover what employee engagement means and how you can build a team of engaged employees. And then linked into that is around organisational wellbeing and how you can start to build a culture focused on the wellbeing of your teams. And then finally, we'll think about you as a leadership team and what you need to be starting to do to drive that people-centric culture, some of the skills that leaders need to be able to lead that through, and some of the shorter and long-term areas of focus. And then we'll have some time at the end for any questions or discussion points. So I just thought I'd start with some definitions of a people-centric culture for those that might not fully understand what it means. So I'll give you a moment to read those through, but essentially the essence is around focusing on your employees first and foremost. When you're setting your strategy and your strategic objectives, putting your people at the front of that. When you're making decisions, again, considering your employees and your people, and that everyone has that understanding of the vision and the purpose of the organisation and how they can contribute towards that. So I think having a culture of trust is a key component in being people-centric, and some research by PwC showed that 55% of CEOs think that a lack of trust is a threat to their organisation. So you need to think about some of the things that you can do to try and build that trust throughout all your teams and your employees. So some of the things that you can do to build that trust is rewarding success across the organisation. Giving kind of challenging projects and objectives to people, having projects that are achievable but challenging really help to kind of build that trust within an organisation. Allowing employees to have that autonomy and to allow them to manage people and manage projects in their own way is a really big motivator for people. And communications, which we'll talk about a couple of times in this session, is really, really important. Only 40% of employees believe that they're well informed about the organisation's goals and strategies. And when there's uncertainty around the future direction of an organisation, this can lead to high stress levels within employees. So ongoing and honest communications are really key, and having that openness about when you're facing challenges can help to build that trust and engagement. So just want to share some research that was carried out by a neuroscientist to look at the relationship between trust and performance, and this was based over a study over 10 years. So those companies that were in the highest quartile, i.e. a high trust organisation, saw many positive impacts on their organisational performance. So firstly, those in high trust organisations saw 50% higher levels of productivity, and they also saw higher levels of loyalty, with 50% more individuals planning to stay within their organisation over the next year, and 88% of those saying that they'd recommend their company as a good place to work to their friends and their families. In high trust companies, engagement was also 76% higher, which led to people feeling much more closer to their colleagues and individuals saying that they enjoyed their job more. And well-being is also increased, with people reporting 106% more energy at work, 74% less stress, 40% less burnout, and 13% less sick days. So this is some quite compelling research, really, that outlines why building trust into your organisation is so important. So I don't want to focus too much on the last 12 months and the pandemic. However, we do need to recognise the impact that the last 12 months has had on organisations and individuals. And as such, we need to understand how our people are now feeling and reevaluate our approach to people and culture to ensure that it's relevant to the situation that we currently find ourselves in, and to set us up for the future based on the experiences that we've all had and felt over the last year. So this is some recent research by McKinsey & Co in October 2020, and it just highlights how employees are currently feeling and how this is affecting their ability to work, and therefore the impact on our organisations. So nearly half of individuals are now looking for new roles, and this will be due to a variety of factors. But leaders need to address this and think about what they can put in place to do within their organisations to really retain that talent and put people at the forefront to build that loyalty and engagement, so people want to stay within the organisation. 43% are also feeling demotivated, and 38% are saying that they're less productive than usual. And there's no doubt that it's been a really difficult 12 months. But with diminishing motivation and productivity levels impacting our organisation and our bottom line, we quickly need to think about how we re-engage people and how we take people on the journey and talk more about what we can do. It's also highlighted the negative impact on mental health, and 36% of people saying that their mental health has impacted on their sales performance. And certainly in the UK, there's been so much research around the detrimental impact that the pandemic has had on our mental well-being, with one of the largest UK mental health charities, Mind, suggesting that 60% of adults have said their mental health has deteriorated in the last 12 months. So this is where a focus of well-being is really, really important, because if our employees are not mentally fit, then it's going to impact their performance at work. And finally, some of the other statistics just highlight the negative impact on innovation, creativity, and social interactions that are going to impact the performance of our organisations. So now we'll talk a little bit about engagement and what does kind of engagement mean. So high engagement is having a strong connection with one's work and colleagues, feeling like a real contributor and enjoying ample chances to learn. So why is employee engagement important, and what does it mean for our organisation? So again, just sharing a little bit more research with you, and this data came from a study that Gallup did, and this covers over 112,000 teams, over 2.7 million employees across 54 industries in 96 countries. So it really is kind of global data that we can pull on. And this data shows that in the top quartiles of organisations that have high employee engagement, these significantly outperform those in quartiles on a number of different performance outcomes. So the data shows that in those high engagement organisations, there's 81% less absenteeism, which will save money as well as reducing presenteeism. There were also 64% fewer safety incidents. And again, this links into that reduced absenteeism. And those organisations see between 18% and 43% less employee turnover. And that is based on the sector that they're in and whether it's a high or low turnover sector. So this will significantly reduce costs relating to recruitment, training, and developing new employees. The data also shows that there's a 10% higher customer loyalty. So when you look after your people will look after your customers, and they will receive a better experience, which leads to greater levels of customer loyalty. These organisations also see 18% higher sales and 23% higher profitability. So all this research and data shows that as well as it's the right thing to do to look after your people, it also makes financial and business sense on so many different levels. So what are some of the areas that drive employee engagement? So again, pulling on some global research from Qualtrics, the top driver for engagement is actually that ability to keep learning and developing. And this is particularly relevant for millennials and Gen Zs who continually want to grow their skills. And linked to this is also managers that actively support their employees with their career development and show interest in helping people with their growth. Employees need to understand how they're contributing to the vision of their organisation, and they need a purpose and to understand the difference that they're making. And they need to be recognised for that at work. And recognition doesn't always need to be, higher salaries or lots of benefits. It's just that acknowledgement and appreciation of the work that they're doing. And finally, confidence in the senior leadership team to make the right decisions will build trust within your organisation, which in turn will lead to greater engagement levels. And I'll touch on some of the areas for leaders to focus on a little later on. So employee engagement needs to be considered in totality and not in isolation, as every single touch point that you have with your employees contribute to engagement levels. And if employees feel that some of these areas are not deemed important by your organisation, then engagement levels will fall. So this is a model that we've developed, which we feel covers the key areas that need to be included and focused on in relation to engagement. So firstly, this whole approach needs to be underpinned by your organisation vision, values and purpose, which need to be central to everything that you do. If you're not clear about this, or you think that this needs to be renewed or updated, this needs to be your starting point, as everything else that you do will flow from this. Next, you need to think about what you want your culture to be. What sort of organisation do you want to be? What do you want your employees to say about you, and how do you want them to feel when they come to work? And what do you want your people to say about your culture? You need to understand where you are currently, where you want to be, and have a plan in place that takes you on that journey. And in order to really embed this new culture through your organisation, it needs to be leadership led. It can't just be something that HR lead because it's related to people or one or two members of the leadership team. It really does need every single member of that leadership team to play their part and embedding this through the organisation. So we've talked a little bit about trust, and we'll cover wellbeing a little bit later on. But other areas of employee engagement are building this culture of support and making people really feel part of something. And this sense of community is really important in harnessing a positive culture. And certainly one of the areas that people have missed when they've been home working or not in the office is that social interaction with colleagues and being able to call upon other individuals to help when they need it. I touched on that individuals need to be thanked and recognised for when they do things well, when they achieve their goals, and when they hit their targets. And building in regular recognition makes people feel valued, and it also raises the performance across the team because people are aspiring to get that recognition themselves. Continually investing in learning and development also increases engagement, and it also allows you to have a more confident and competent employees. And again, this doesn't always need to be through providing training courses or qualifications. You know, think about how you can develop your employees through shadowing people that are more senior in the organisation. Think about how you can get people involved in different projects or having secondment opportunities available in different parts of the business that grow people's knowledge and skills outside of the area that they currently work on. And again, I touched on that clarity piece. So people need to understand what is expected of them, how they're contributing to the wider aims of the business, how their performance will be measured, and what good looks like. And knowing that you're doing your job and doing your job well can really help employees feel more engaged. And communications, you know, they're absolutely key to everything that you do, and it is really hard to get communications right, and people will always say that they're not communicated enough to. But think about how you communicate each of these areas relating to employee engagement on an ongoing basis, and also think about what your plan is and using a variety of communication tools. So, you know, bringing together your whole organisation, having team meetings, filtering these messages through managers, as well as kind of emails and intranet sites that you might have. I think it's worth saying that none of this happens overnight. It's a journey that you as leaders need to commit to on an ongoing basis. You won't see results straight away, but understanding where you are, where you want to get to, and how you measure that success is really, really important. And certainly we find through our experience with working with organisations, when people join up all the dots and have all these interlinks, they will see much higher levels of engagement and satisfaction. So when thinking about employee engagement, it's not just about when employees are in their role, it covers the whole employee life cycle. So it covers the experience that individuals have when they first show that interest in joining your organisation, right through to them leaving and everything in between. So these are some of the key areas that you need to consider. So firstly is attraction and attracting people to come and work for your organisation. So your current employee experience and their engagement will impact on the quality of candidates that you will get wanting to apply for your organisation. So 71% of employees use or have used referrals from organisations' current employees to learn about job opportunities. And attraction also encompasses the information that you communicate in the public domain about your organisation, how you promote your vision and your values, how you talk about, you know, what benefits and what you offer to your employees. These are all really, really important. And we'll talk a little bit about millennials and Gen Z, but certainly for them, how people are looked after is one of the most important factors for them when choosing to apply to organisations. Secondly is the recruitment process, and this is probably one of the most important things that you do, getting the right people for the right roles within your organisation and people that align to your values and your behaviours that you have within your company. And to attract the top talent and the top people to come and work for you, you need to be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors. And so this is a key opportunity for you to talk about your people-led culture when you're going through recruitment. Then when you've recruited people into your organisation, the onboarding is really, really important. So that induction, and this needs to start on day one, really, laying those foundations for new people that are joining your company. And this is also an opportunity to really set expectations for the role and get to know individuals, what motivates them, what development needs they might have, and how you can fully integrate them right at the start into their teams and into your organisation. Then once an employee is onboarded, it's those ongoing performance and development conversations and all the things we touched on in the last slide around employee engagement. And all these things can't just be done on an ad hoc basis. They need to be continually brought into regular conversations that you're having. And those individuals that have regular conversations around their performance and around their development needs are 2.8 times more likely to be engaged with their job role. And then finally, thinking about offboarding. So when individuals are leaving the organisation, it's still really important that they have a positive experience and that they're treated with respect. In many organisations, when an individual says that they're leaving, there's that feeling that the organisation no longer cares for them, which can distort their view of the organisation, even if they've had a really good experience up until them leaving. And as we know, engaged employees really help to decrease that turnover. So when employees leave with a positive experience, they will share this then with other people and other organisations. So what employees want now from their jobs versus what they've wanted previously is changing, and people now want purpose and meaning from their work. They want to be known for what they're good at. So previously, one of the most important factors for employees was the salary, but now the younger generations that are within our workforce are more driven by working for an organisation that has a purpose and aligning their purpose with the organisational purpose and values. People want to work for an organisation that is making a difference and that has a conscience. Again, development opportunities are becoming more and more important for employees, and this is a big factor in how engaged employees are. So people now in the younger generations, they're more likely to have portfolio careers and perhaps a couple of jobs, and they don't want to be tied to one job for life. Therefore, working for an organisation that places emphasis on the growth and development is really, really important. And individuals now want more of a, they don't want to be coached through their challenges and help coming up with solutions themselves. And now more and more organisations are providing coaches and mentors for people, especially some of those more junior people that are on potentially a succession plan into leadership positions. And individuals that receive coaching report 80% higher increased self-confidence and 70% benefit from increased work performance, relationships, and more effective communication skills. So it is something that, again, can really add value to your organisation. And then linked to coaching is the desire from individuals to have those ongoing conversations. As I touched on, it's not just around an annual review once per year. It's around, focusing on people's strengths and development needs on an ongoing basis. And finally, and I think this has been highlighted even further over the last 12 months, individuals want this work-life balance. They don't want to be working 60, 70, 80 hours per week, and they don't want to always feel like they have to respond to emails at the evenings and weekends. They want to be successful in their job, but their personal life is also just as important. And especially in certain cultures, leaders and organisations need to think about how they shift their culture from those long hours and those always on culture to one that puts employees' well-being first. So going to touch a little bit on well-being now, and again, this has become increasingly high on the agenda for leaders over the past couple of years, and the pandemic has highlighted the need even further to focus on the well-being of employees to ensure that they can be at their best personally, so they can also be at their best whilst they're at work. And well-being means lots of different things to lots of different people. And again, there's so many definitions of what well-being means for individuals and for organisations. But essentially, it means being happy, being healthy, where individuals can reach their potential, where they can work productively, and where they can make that contribution to the communities that they're involved with. And there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to wellbeing, but from an organisational perspective, it's about putting in place programmes, initiatives and support that employees can access that will allow them to thrive. So this is one of the models that we use for wellbeing that incorporates a number of different areas to think about as you start to build your approach for wellbeing. And many of us think that wellbeing is just kind of our mental well-being and our physical well-being, but it is much broader than that. So it does encompass our emotional well-being, which is our ability to be able to cope with the stresses and challenges of life. And this is where you need to consider what support you can give to your employees and how you can open up conversations around mental health and mental well-being within your organisation. Our physical well-being is about us having that good health and those energy levels. And when individuals have poor physical health, it impacts in all areas of their life, including their ability to perform at work. So this is where you consider how you might promote positive health through information and programmes around nutrition, hydration, sleep and physical activity, all areas that really contribute to good physical health. Social well-being, this is our sense of belonging really, and this encompassing feeling valued and included and being able to play our part within our work setting. So this is where you need to think about how you can ensure that employees feel valued, encourage those social interactions and really build those strong teams that connect with each other. Next is career well-being, and this is about finding purpose and satisfaction in your job role. And this is where it's important to understand, the career aspirations of your employees and understand what engages them and what motivates them. And finally, and this is probably quite a new area relating to wellbeing, it's financial wellbeing, which is understanding, that you have enough to be able to meet your needs. And organisations are now investing in financial wellbeing programmes, which give advice and support to allow individuals to plan their finances, build that financial security and seek that help when it's needed. And so a comprehensive wellbeing programme will cover each of these areas and offer various programmes and initiatives that are tailored to the needs of your organisations. So why is wellbeing important for your organisation? So I mentioned millennials and Gen Z, and these now make up nearly half of our workforce, and their wants, needs, views and outlooks are very different to the older generations that we might have within our organisations. And so for us to recruit and retain the best talent and develop that next generation of leaders, we need to be asking ourselves, what do our younger workers want from their workplace and their job? So the most important factor that millennials and Gen Z look for is from an employer is one that cares about their well-being. And these individuals will be looking for those organisations that are actively promoting positive well-being when they're looking to apply for roles. And if they're not getting this within their current organisations, then they're likely to look to other organisations that they can move to. And again, 2020 has brought employee well-being more into focus, and people are becoming more conscious around their health and the impact that work has on their well-being. And if your employees aren't healthy within your organisation, then your organisation isn't going to be healthy either. And it's one of the crucial things that impacts your employees' ability to thrive. And as much as I'm passionate around, organisations spending that time to invest in their people and their well-being, there's also a financial implication. So some research from Deloitte last year showed that for every £1 spent on well-being, the return on investment is estimated at £5, which is from reduced absence levels, higher productivity levels, as well as reduced employee turnover and reduced presenteeism. And it's important to think about the demographics of your organisation as you start to think about the wellbeing, your approach to wellbeing, because this will differ across different age groups. So if you do have a very younger workforce, you need to think about how you can bring wellbeing more into your culture. And there are other areas as well that contribute to employee wellbeing, and mostly these areas, if they're not managed correctly, will lead to high stress levels and absence relating to stress. So the first is demands. So, you know, are workloads reasonable? What are working patterns that people are working? You know, are these conducive to a work-life balance? And employees having a working environment that's safe and supports them to achieve their objectives. Secondly is control, and this covers like how employees are given that autonomy to manage and lead projects themselves. When individuals are micromanaged or not given the autonomy to carry out their job roles, this can increase stress levels. Having lots of support from line managers, the organisation and colleagues, again, to be able to succeed in your job role is really important. And those relationships that I've touched on. So how can you foster positive relationships which avoid conflict, and managing poor behaviour as soon as you see it, really, and managing that in a quick and professional way. And finally, thinking about how change is managed within your organisation. So, you know, people do find it difficult to when they go through change. So this can lead to increased levels of stress and anxiety if this isn't measured correctly. And I think all of these lead to, or they link to, psychological safety. So employees feeling like they can speak their views, they can challenge things, they can put forward ideas, and not being afraid if they make a mistake. And this links back to what we talked around trust and how important it is to make employees feel valued within an organisation. So how can you build this culture of well-being? So firstly, having a plan. Anything that you do within your organisation, you need a plan, and it's good to use any data that you might have to help shape what your areas of focus might be and get that feedback, and be realistic about what you can achieve as well. You know, you won't be able to achieve everything straight away, so think about what's going to make that biggest impact, start there and then grow. It needs to be leadership led. So again, it can't just be HR that's driving this forwards. The leaders need to lead by example. And if you're implementing new programs or initiatives, have leaders taking part in that, because your employees will mirror the behaviours of your leaders. If you do have a program at the moment, think about how you can review this and ensure that it's still relevant and current based on what your employees need. And we touched a little bit on mental health, but again, thinking about how you can have a really positive approach to mental health, upskilling your managers and training your leaders so they can have those open conversations, promoting that work-life balance, and thinking around what other support you can put in place, potentially counselling or therapy to help employees that are really struggling with their mental well-being. And again, I think the last 12 months has shown that we can work more flexibly and that we don't always need to be in the office all the time. So think about what your approach is to flexible working and how you can allow people to work different hours or perhaps work part-time or have job shares. And this will increase the kind of engagement levels and support the well-being of your teams. And again, thinking about how you tailor your programs and make these personalised to the different groups and demographics within your organisation, because everyone will have different needs and it's not always a one-size-fits-all that will work. And as with everything that you do, continually seek that regular feedback and review the offer, so it's always current, it's always based on what people need at the moment, and base it on very much on what you need as an organisation, not necessarily on what other organisations are doing. So talk a little bit now around some of the things that you can do as a leadership team. And, you know, being a leader is a privilege, but it also comes with kind of significant stress, especially through challenging times. So it's very much around how you support each other as a leadership team. And I think, first of all, setting your standards. So what do you expect from each other as a leadership team? How are you going to work together? You know, what behaviours do you think are acceptable? And these will then all filter through the organisation. Understand where you are now and where you want to be in the future. and live and breathe your values of your organisations. Again, you can't hold people accountable for their behaviours if you're not living and breathing those themselves. Again, thinking about how you're unified as a leadership team, so you won't always agree with each other and there will be disagreements, but when you're going out to your employees, show that unified front, and again that will help build that trust and confidence in the leadership team, which we saw earlier was really important around engagement levels. Celebrating success, which we've talked about, be honest around what isn't working as well. You're not always going to get everything right, and having those honest conversations about what's working and what isn't is really important. And being vulnerable, that's talked around a lot at the moment. So opening yourselves up when you might be struggling or when things might not be going right, asking for help. This can bring across a real human side to leaders, and again help with that trust and engagement levels. And finally, that leading by example and sort of leading from the top really is really, really important. And so as a leader, we always need to be learning and developing our skills. And these are some of the things that you need to think about to be able to lead with an employee-centric approach. So firstly is that kind of self-reflection bit, so understanding who you are as a leader, what your leadership style is, and what your areas for development is. And we use the Myers-Briggs as a tool to help individuals to learn about themselves and how they can work within teams and different personality types. Thinking about how you build relationships and how your behaviours might impact on others. Again, communication's absolutely key. Understanding around how you really listen to people, that active listening. And communication is not just around, what you say, it's how you say it and your tone of voice and your body language, which is all really important. I've touched on coaching and how this is a really key skill for leaders now, and helping people come to conclusions themselves, not just telling them what to do, but really coaching your employees. Goal setting, this is really important for leaders to be able to set those clear goals for team members and having those conversations around how that links through to the strategy, and being able to provide feedback in a constructive way that engages and motivates employees is really important, and having that growth mindset as an organisation and encouraging feedback as part of continual growth and development of everyone. And then finally, aligning what you need as an organisation to what the wants and needs are of the individuals, and that whole ensuring that employees feel connected to the purpose and the vision of the organisation. So in terms of some short-term areas of focus, these are some of the things you can think about. So everyone understanding their roles and responsibilities, so continuing to communicate this through what you're expecting from people. Everyone working towards this one vision, so being clear about what your strategy is, where you're going as a business. Giving that constant support and understanding what your employees need to be able to achieve and be the best that they can be. Ongoing communication, talked about celebrating that success, getting that regular feedback, and when you do get feedback, acting on it. So if you do regular surveys or you hold focus groups, make sure that you feed back to your employees on what you're doing with the feedback. Otherwise people won't feed back in the future because they think nothing will be done about it. And finally, measure what you're doing. So you might have measurements in place now, so use that as a baseline and a benchmark and grow from that. If you don't have any measures in place, think about a couple of KPIs which might be related to absence or turnover or employee engagement, and start to measure it so you can see that progress in the journey that you're on. And some of those longer term areas of focus, you need to keep focusing on the long term and what it is your vision is for being people centric. Continually embed the vision and the values. I can't say it enough, people buy into the purpose of the organisation and want to know how they're contributing to that. Continually invest in learning and development. This is often one of the things that when companies are struggling financially is cut, but it's really, really important to continue with this and continue to give people time to focus on their growth and development. Have that focus on well-being that we talked about and really try and embed that culture of well-being. Take a regular pulse of your organisation to understand how people are feeling currently. You know, how they're feeling now will be different to how they felt 6 months ago. So don't assume just because you did a survey a year ago or 6 months that people feel the same. And that change piece, so it's understanding when you are going through big change, how you can manage that in a sensitive and empathetic way, knowing that employees can find change quite unsettling and it can lead to stress. So just think about how you do that and take people on the journey when you're going through change. So in summary, being people-centric, it's not about being easy on your employees and giving them an easy ride or expecting less from them. It's about holding people to account, giving clear direction, giving people the tools to succeed without micromanaging, and treating employees like people. And it can no longer be a nice to have, it is a critical element of your strategy as an organisation. And in order for you to recruit and retain the best talent and to have motivated, productive and engaged people, it does need to be a priority. And it can't be that standalone approach. It can't just be something that you do in isolation. It needs to be integrated into everything that you do. And measured and developed based on the ongoing needs of your organisation and people. And the starting point is to understand, you know, where are you now? What is the culture? What do you want the culture to be? What is your journey? And what are the risks to you if you don't do anything about it? And then once you know this, you can put a plan and approach in place that's led by your leaders, but also an expectation of your managers to filter through as well. So to build a culture that's employee-centric, you need to think about 3 core areas. One is around building trust. The second is around focusing on those areas that's going to engage and motivate your employees. And thirdly, having a focus on employee well-being. So don't forget, your people are your biggest assets. And to finish with a quote by Colin Powell, leadership is all about people. It's not about organisations. It's not about plans. It's not about strategies. It's about people, motivating people to get the job done. Thank you very much. And yeah, open to any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Gemma. I will start the first question. So, I mean, you touched on a lot of points which were important for leaders and for engagement for employees and employers within the company. But what have you seen? You know, you talked about a few pillars, and one of them was well-being. So, what have you seen post or during the pandemic versus prior to pandemic? What has changed? I mean, where you see more gaps, and what areas in organizations and companies today compared to before?
Yeah, so I mean, well-being is the big one, really. I think from our experience, organisations were starting to think about it, and it was becoming increasingly important pre the pandemic. But certainly, we've seen organisations investing more heavily in their well-being, thinking about how they can really look after their people, especially when people have been working from home, not coming into the organisation or coming into the office. There's been a lot around how you can lead people remotely. So when you're not having those social interactions and those, you know, regular touch points that you get in the office, how you can still continue to support your people whilst they are at home full time. And I think the whole flexible working is now something that we're working with organisations with in the UK. So as we start to go back into the office, what that looks like, how they have increased flexibility for their people. So, you know, maybe not going into the office all the time. Some organisations are thinking about, you know, 50% home working, 50% office working, how they can use that to support the well-being of their employees, because they might not have so much travel time. It helps with, you know, children or caring responsibilities that people have. So I suppose as we come out of it, we're seeing a greater focus on well-being, understanding how organisations can be more flexible and measure people on their outputs, really, not the hours that they're spent at their desk.
There was a question from one of the team here about the if organization having continuous growth and profitability, and where they also have a high attrition rate, is there something relevant to each other, or is that considered good or bad, or that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, as much as possible, you want to keep your attrition rates relatively low, because it's a big cost to the organisation to re-recruit people, to retrain up people. So I think it's about understanding why people are leaving the organisation. So, you know, having those conversations, doing exit interviews when people are leaving to understand, you know, are they going on to better jobs and to better their careers, which is one thing, or are they leaving because, you know, they don't like the culture, they don't feel valued, they're not being challenged, there's not enough investment in their learning and development. So it's really getting to the bottom of why people are leaving, and then understanding what you can put in place to help with that. Because you know, some turnover is positive, and you know, you do want some attrition within your organisation, but you know, when you start to see a lot of your top employees leaving on a regular basis, then you need to think about, you know, why it is they're leaving and what you can do to try and retain some of that talent.
So I guess the takeaway from today, there will be, for organization who already had missions and vision and values and different programs or different things within the culture context, these now has to be all improved. And if somebody didn't have it, now maybe it's the time to have it in a different way, because the focus, as you said, is all related to well-being and a few other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, a lot of organizations will do a lot of the things that I talk about now. And I think it's around pulling it all together. The communications, as I say, is absolutely critical. You know, employees understanding what the organization does, filtering that through on a regular basis is really, really important. And there might be some areas that organizations do really, really well, but other areas that they haven't considered. And, you know, it is, employees want an awful lot, I suppose, from an organisation. So it's looking at where you've got strengths within your organisation, but then also some of the areas where you might not be, you know, doing a lot, you might not have a big focus on, and thinking about how you can start to build that into your strategies and your plans, and have that kind of all-rounded, holistic approach to people, not just focusing on one or two areas.
Mm-hmm. So you see that in going forward in businesses, the engagement role would be more actively within organizations, that if it was not thought much about it before, it has to be focused more on this area.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I tried to show, you know, quite a lot of the research which is out there at the moment, to show how important it is, because, you know, when you do look after your people, they will be looking after your business for you. And when people feel motivated and engaged in their organisation, they're going to want to do the best job that they can, which in turn is only going to be beneficial for your organisation and for your profit and for your bottom line. So you know, it really does need to be a priority for organisations, because, you know, as I said, people are their greatest asset, and if they don't look after them, then people aren't going to look after their business for you.
What is the recommended time frame that you ask for feedback? So whether that's you call it what, employee satisfaction survey, or a feedback from employees or peers or something like that. I mean, after these things are changing today, so will be still annually, or do you think this should be more often?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different approaches. So I think it's good still to do a bigger survey on an annual basis, which covers more areas within the organisation. But you know, maybe doing a pulse survey on a quarterly basis, just to, you know, understand how people are feeling. But then it not just being about surveys, it's how you build in that feedback mechanism into, you know, maybe meetings that you have with all of your teams, how managers are continually getting feedback within team meetings and one-to-ones, and sort of continually feeding that through. So surveys is one way to get feedback, but there's actually lots of other ways where continually you can understand how your people are feeling, to help shape what you might need to be doing in the future.
Okay. All right, I guess we're almost coming to an end. Few minutes left. There's no further questions. Thank you very much for participation today, and we would like to inform everyone, please follow us on the social media, where we will post the upcoming webinars, and we look forward to see everyone in the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for very good, useful advice. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.